What's going on with millennials? Is it as bad as some conservatives think it is, or is it better? Is it changing? Some statistics will show that there is a shift to the right, whereas other statistics will show that the Bernie Sanders movement was fueled primarily on the backs of younger voters. So kind of loose ball fumble, who wants to take that first? Trae, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm from the deep rural South. That's where I grew up. I live out here now, so I get the purpose of this panel and why conservatives probably worried about millennials, but like just speaking from my perspective, y'all are crushing it where I'm from, buddy. Like there's a lot of conservative millennials. Well, yeah, I'm not happy about that, but I'm glad y'all are. But yeah, because that's just kind of what you are where I'm from, and it don't matter.
Which
it doesn't matter how
from?
old you are. I'm from Tennessee.
Okay, cool.
So yeah,
it's one of the few states that I think the younger voters actually voted for Trump was Tennessee and a couple of other southern states. So,
right. Yeah.
So Scottie, what do you think?
Well, speaking of Tennessee, hi, I didn't know, neighbor. I'm from Nashville. So
All right. Love
we're going to try to
Nashville.
keep the southern accent down a little bit out here. We can try to hide it, but it will get thicker.
I can't hide it.
Yeah, I tried. It doesn't work very well. I think you have to look at millennials in two different segments. You have young millennials who are just graduating from college, that are single, that are getting into their first job, that are dealing with getting on health insurance, car loans, mortgages. And then you've got the other spectrum. I am a millennial. I was born in 1980. I am on the other end. I have two kids, though, 9 and 10 years old. I've now bought my third house. Now, I don't have 3 houses, but I've had to deal with trying to get a home loan 3 different times. I'm having to deal with health insurance. In Tennessee, it is hard to get a family of 4 on health insurance right now. We don't have it. So I think you have to look at both sides. Millennials right now are spanning a wide spectrum of issues, and it's all about perspective and viewpoint. And where conservatives in the Deep South are winning is they're speaking to, I think, the older crowd that are having to deal with a lot of the issues that government directly is involved in. Healthcare, loans, starting small business, and that's why I think conservatives are winning and why overall the upper end of the millennial generation voted for Donald Trump in 2016.
Yeah, so I think you could divide millennials into brackets, 25 and older and 25 and younger. And so it's very tempting and easy to want to put all millennials in one bucket, but when you bifurcate it, to your point, it shows that it's actually a big difference. And so I get asked this question all the time, man, and I'd love to hear you talk about it. And I get it asked kind of sarcastically from older conservatives, like, why do young people like Bernie Sanders so much? And so I have my version of an answer, which actually compliments, Bernie for his actual talking about issues that young people talk about, but I'd love to hear your take, and because it's undoubtedly he started a movement with college students that resonated unlike any political movement in recent memory.
Sure. Well, I think it's definitely correct that millennials are not a monolithic group. But if you look at polling, you will see that there are similarities with the two age sets that are considered millennials, the older ones and the younger ones. So Pew Research is just one example of, really great comprehensive poll on millennials and what they care about the most. And I think the reason why Bernie Sanders did so well among millennials is because millennials do want more government in regulating certain parts of what we're seeing in the country right now. So I know conservatives hate regulation, but the reality is, millennials love capitalism, but they don't love crony capitalism, which is what we have right now, where you have the richest people in the country taking advantage of a system that's been rigged against pretty much everyone else. And so you're right. I mean, I'm a millennial. I just went through the process of escrow and getting a mortgage. And guess what? I worked my entire life to save everything that I could save just to put a down payment on a home, and it is not anywhere near what I thought I would have at this age. Like, my parents came here as immigrants, had nothing, and my father managed to work as a handyman, save enough money, and buy apartment buildings. Guess what? Millennials can't do that today. And it's because our wages have been stagnant, we have been ignored, we graduated into a terrible economy, we are dealing with massive student loan debt, we're earning 20% less than the generation before us, and that's adjusted for inflation. And so we're dealing with all sorts of economic issues because of this crony capitalism. There was only one candidate that talked about that issue and did so relentlessly. That was Bernie Sanders. And that's why they, overwhelmingly supported him. So that's my answer on it.
Sure. Guy, what's your thoughts? You have a wonderful book where you talk mostly about millennials and college campuses.
Well, I think if we're talking about the ideology of the millennial generation, I think it is in a number of ways shifting to the left, but not every way. But the consistent thread that I see and hear when I talk to people in that age bracket when it comes to politics and both parties is absolute abject disgust. I think millennials cannot stand our political process. They do not like either party. They do not trust either party, which is why I think you saw a lot in the primaries in each bucket. You had Donald Trump attracting a very faithful following among a group of millennials, and then, of course, the Bernie Sanders revolution on the other side. These are both people, whether you agree with them or not, whether you voted for them or not, to ascend to the nomination. These were people who were taking just a battle axe to their own political parties and their own establishments. And I think that a lot of millennials are like, whatever's happening and what you people have been doing for the last couple decades doesn't feel like it's working for us, so we just want to kind of burn it down. So Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I have to jump in. I totally agree with you, because if you look at the numbers, let's say you compare the election when Obama got elected versus our recent election, you will see a shift in political ideology among millennials. They overwhelmingly identified as Democrats, and now all of a sudden you see them saying, no, we have no party affiliation, and it's because they feel like they've been left behind by both parties. That's why, when Hillary won the nomination, a lot of millennials were like, I'm either voting for a third party or I'm not voting at all.
And Jordan, I'll ask you a question in a second. If I were to give a piece of advice to Democrats, it'd be get rid of this superdelegate system. It's like the most undemocratic system I could possibly imagine. And so it's my opinion. I don't know why you guys have that. It's weird. I'm glad.
No, hang on.
Wait a minute, Charlie, I want him to keep it. As a Republican, please keep the super delegate
I know,
system.
but if you guys want to help
Please.
do it, but I kind of laugh.
Well, no,
It's just whoever's
Charlie,
the best connected wins.
Charlie,
So-
you're missing it. You're missing
wrong,
it.
yeah.
They have the super delegates so they can nominate likable, electable people.
Forgot about it. Exactly. So, Jordan, jump in here. What are your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, before we dive into
Millennials in general, I think I love their fidget spinners. I think those are pretty sweet. I think what I've noticed is like the extremes in 2016 definitely control the narrative, and there was nobody in the middle like me that's just like trying to get by and pay their phone bill. I just feel like that is what I hear a lot of, right? I hear a lot of. But maybe it's because millennials fucking love magic, man. Bernie's like, free college. Like, yeah, sure, And then Trump's like, we're going to build a wall as high as the sky. And we're like, yeah. People love fucking magic. And that's true. And I think that both sides appeal to it. Now, people in the middle, like I find myself to be a bit of a centrist, and I'll lean one way or the other. I'm from Texas, which is another nation, and altogether. And I've had to. My personal experience is that I have to actually hear people out. It's weird, from both sides of the aisle. But I'll say that I don't feel as though we've captured this. Any party has captured the center. I think no party has captured the center. I feel like, and if you disagree with me, keep crossing your arms. That's a nonverbal fuck you. That's fine. But I don't think that's happened. There's a lot. I mean, people are like you were saying, like you bought a house. You bought 3 houses. It's awesome. No, your third house. I'm sorry, your third house.
Okay, started in the dog house.
You started
We're
in the
moving
dog
on
house.
up.
I just feel like somebody needs to speak to that because, there's some things I disagree with, some things I agree with. Like Lindsey Graham. Like, to me, he's like a foreigner. I agree. Like, I understand every
He's
third.
a foreigner to us, too,
No.
trust
What?
me.
Okay, good. So I understand every third thing that he says. You know what I'm saying? That's usually how it is. Like, for instance, if, like, I'm rambling. But if they get away with, like, you just bought your house, right? So if we get a condo, sorry, apologies. But if we get rid of the interest, tax deferment or whatever, then that'll be bad for you. You're middle class and you're trying to achieve, right? And that's a part of, I think, Mulvaney's plan. And I, as a millennial, disagree with that, And I have a house too, guys. All right? And I don't want that to happen. I really don't want that. I really want people to ladder up into, I'm a dollar and cents kind of guy, and I want people to ladder up. And I'm sure, like, this hasn't happened exactly for all millennials yet, but you want to be a part of that American dream. You want that house, right? No? Okay, cool.
So let me jump in. So the CEO and main host of our show, Cenk Uygur, always gets on me because I'm obsessed with issues related to housing. Because to me, that represents, owning a part of the American dream.
Right.
And a lot of millennials right now do not have access to it. They just cannot buy homes. I'm insanely lucky because I was able to, start my career pretty early on, save, live with my parents until I was 26. Let's keep it real, right? And because of that, I was able to, now finally own a little piece of the American dream at the age of 31. But my peers are not as lucky as me. Right. A lot of them do not have a stable job like I have. A lot of them are underemployed. A lot of them are making below, a living wage. And they're struggling. They got that college education, but they're dealing with $150,000 in student loan debt. And so, we can go ahead and blame them, which I think both parties have done, and say, well, you just didn't get the right kind of degree, and you're just not working hard enough, and stop eating that avocado toast, and maybe you can afford that home.
No, that avocado toast is too good. I don't know about y'all, but it's too good. It's magic. Go ahead.
But we need... It is magic. I love it.
Yeah.
But we need to actually hear them out. Regardless of what political party you're from, they have genuine concerns, and they see this system as one that's broken, which is why I think a lot of them are moving toward third parties or not having a political affiliation.
I think where the political question is, whose fault is it and who's responsible for fixing it? I have seen the conservatism, Republicans, they say self-responsibility. We need to fix it within our own communities. I see usually on the left, on the liberal side, more government. More government needs to be the solution. Conservatives don't look to the government for a solution. We look to ourselves. And I think that right there should appeal to all ages.
Trae, let me ask a question. I think...
Sorry, I have to respond to that for 1 second.
Okay.
So while you guys might applaud the idea of less government, this is a panel about what we need to do to bring millennials in, at least what conservatives need to do to bring millennials in. Look at the polling. They actually want more government. They want more government involvement in lowering tuition. They want more government involvement
in
regulating. It does depend on the issue, and all you have to do, again, is look at the polling. Pew Research polled these students or these millennials issue by issue, and they want more government when it comes to these problems.
You're right, but it's a very contradictory generation. I can speak to this rather well because I do millennial outreach, where young people will say, about a 60% clip, we want socialized medicine. Okay. The next question will be, do you think government can effectively and efficiently deliver socialized medicine? 70% no. It's one of the most contradictory generations. They say, we want lower taxes. Right. 80% yes. Do you want to pay, do you think the rich should pay more taxes? Yes. Do you trust the government? No, it's very contradictory. Yeah. No, it depends on the issue. That's the first thing I'll say. Right. But I will argue there is a blend of libertarianism in this generation as well.
That's right there. That's the strength.
To say that, to just blanket and say they want more government or it's a progressive, I would say that's not diving deep enough into the research of the polling. I will admit completely there is a hunger and a thirst amongst a certain quadrant of millennials that do want more government, but more than not, there is a growing libertarian movement. I don't trust these guys. I want to keep my money, get them out of my life. I just want to do what I want to do, and it's all corrupt. Get out of my life. And I think there's a lot of that, and you can see that in the Rand Paul movement, which is a equal as powerful movement on the Republican side, if not as big, but still as. Look, Rand Paul and Ron Paul started a liberty movement in the Republican conservative circles that 20 years ago people would have thought unimaginable. So the question I have is, it's actually interesting. You look at the Democratic Party, and Trae, I'd love to ask this question to you. If Hillary Clinton would have just done half as bad with millennials as she did, she would have been president of the United States.
Right.
It's really interesting because it shows that the millennial allegiance to the Democratic Party is evaporating.
Right.
Is that it was a one-time movement with Barack Obama and a one-time movement with Bernie Sanders, but it's not. I'm not a card-carrying Democrat, but I may lean to those ideas. So, for the liberals, what's the lesson here?
Well, I think it goes back to something that's already been touched on up here, which is the disgust that millennials have with the establishment in general, and Hillary was the establishment to a lot of them. But also, though, I will say, I think a lot of those people who either voted, like a protest vote or didn't vote at all, I think a huge chunk of them thought well, I mean, it's fine. I can do that. She's going to win anyway. It's not going to matter, which was fucking stupid. And if they would have known that wasn't the case, I don't think that they would have stayed home or cast those votes in the numbers that they did. I'm not saying some of them still wouldn't have done it. It would have happened. But I think that was a huge part of it. It was like, I don't know if you want to call that arrogance or naivety or both or whatever, but there was an aspect of, he's not going to win no matter what, so I don't have to vote for this establishment candidate, and so it was easier for them to make that decision.
Yeah, there was definitely underestimating Trump and his voters going out to the polls. But more importantly, I mean, it was more than just a protest vote if they casted the ballot for a third-party candidate. I mean, think about it. Again, millennials overwhelmingly supported Bernie Sanders, who was for more government, right? But at the same time, you had this issue with the leaked emails indicating the DNC manipulated the primaries. How angry would you be as a voter who supported Bernie Sanders to know that your own party basically screwed you, doesn't care about your best interests? So I don't begrudge anyone who casted a protest vote. I did not. And it pained me to vote for Hillary Clinton, but I felt like it was the right thing to do. But you know, in this system, I don't blame millennials for feeling like their party turned their backs on them.
Stop talking about those damn emails. Seriously. It's always about the damn emails, right? I mean, seriously. Go ahead.
Oh, no,
You seemed like you wanted to.
I was literally just emoting. I was like, yeah, a lot about the emails. No, I feel like now, well, geez Louise, what about now? Like, we have, I feel this has been a hell of a week, hasn't it, guys? Our buttholes as clenched as mine, because it's really weird out there. I don't know what's happening. Is this a safe space? I can't say buttholes. All right, so
It's like a political
Triggered.
fidget spinner.
Yeah, it's a
That's what
fidget
this week
spinner.
has been.
I'm sorry, you guys are you're like news people, and I'm like not. All right, so
No, buddy, I'm down with the butthole talk.
you're down with butthole. Thanks, man.
You are from Tennessee.
Shout outs to buttholes. All right, so I feel now there's kind of an interesting thing wherein Trump has been elected, and I want to know he symbolizes a lot for a lot of people on the right, obviously, millennials especially. The meme game is sick. But like when we see a situation like this where they're kind of at a loggerheads, I saw a video of you like talking about it on. You're the moderator, but like I saw a video of you like talking about it, and you're right. But what I guess what I'm wondering is what do millennials think now that there's this like impasse, and what I'm not seeing, I think there should be, is like actually a coalescing of the party, a coalescing of the right rather than like Trump using leverage or threatening people in his own party. Like those kind of millennials, like millennials are impressionable. So what do they think now that we're 6 months in?
Well, I think that's last piece is an important part of this, because one of my concerns is that the Republicans have been asking voters for 8 years now, give us the House and the Senate and the White House, and we're going to do all of these things. Mm-hmm. Now, they've accomplished a lot at the state level. There are some really great success stories in a number of conservative and Republican-dominated states. But the federal level is what gets the most attention, the most ink. And this is an opportunity for the Republican Party to demonstrate to voters and millennials, when you elect us, we are going to make your lives better. We are going to enact policies that we believe in, and we're going to keep our promises. And what we saw this last week was 7 years of promises on Obamacare go down the drain. I don't care what you think about Obamacare. We could have that whole debate on another panel. But when you promise something very clear to the American people, election after election after election, and you win those elections, and then you don't deliver, that is pathetic. And that is going to really damage, I think, the Republican Party. And
go ahead.
And one more point, because I think this also comes to trust and telling the truth. I think that millennials value authenticity, which is why Bernie Sanders, the man has been very consistent in what he believes. He honeymooned in the Soviet Union. I mean, the guy is not subtle.
He isn't even giving up his accent, and he lives in Vermont. I mean, it's kind of weird. But go ahead.
So he has this air of authenticity about him, and he makes a lot of these magical promises. I think the Republican Party, one of the things that they ought to give a real shot at with young people is to say, all right, the Democrats say that they're the party of science. They love saying that. We're going to be the party of math, and you guys can promise everything and the sky, and young people might want those things. But there's this thing called math, and it exists, and it's real, and we can't do everything for everyone. That is not what the government can do.
Let's talk about math a little bit.
This is going to get good.
Let's talk about math. So here's some math for you. Back in 2009, Bank of America paid nothing in federal income taxes. In fact, they got a tax rebate. Okay, there's a little bit of math for you. So how many of you here paid federal income taxes? Probably all of you, right? I paid federal income taxes.
I don't want to talk about it.
Why do wealthy banks get away with getting a tax refund while we pay our fair share of taxes? So guess why we have a tax code that works that way? It's because of the right wing. Guess why millennials...
He was in control of
Obama
Congress
had
and the
Hank
president.
Paulson as the Treasury Secretary.
right.
Don't
And
the
who-
left-wing Obama put Goldman Sachs in charge of his Treasury
Exactly,
Secretary.
and that's
Don't
why
you dare try and say it's the right wing. Don't you dare try and say that.
Whoa. Oh my God.
Allow me to finish my point before you jump in, because we now have. And by the way, I agree with you. Okay?
Right wing, though, is what you said.
Let me finish. Okay, I'm talking.
Charlie's
I
fired
agree
up.
with you that Obama.
You're the moderator,
did
dude.
exactly
You gotta
the opposite
moderate,
of
buddy.
what he said he was going to do. Okay, he said that he was going to look out for the little guy. He didn't look out for the little guy, which again is part of the reason why millennials turn their backs, at least some portion, on the Democratic Party. However, the notion that it's only the Democrats that have given these wealthy millionaires and billionaires a pass is ridiculous. And if you want to talk about, cabinet members and the White House administration, let's talk about Trump.
Yes,
Trump has
Gary Cohn
filled
should
his
go,
cabinet
and all those
with
Goldman Sachs
the
guys should
CEO
go.
of
I agree.
ExxonMobil, Wall Street financiers. And then when he was asked, hey, why don't you have, people who are more representative of Americans? Why don't you have people who maybe aren't wealthy in your cabinet? He said, I don't want people who aren't wealthy in my cabinet. Okay? He doesn't think that they're worthy of being in his cabinet.
But both sides are true. I mean, what you're saying is true, and what you're saying is true. And I feel like, there's a ruling class that, there's a tunnel from Goldman Sachs to the White House, right? And Hank Paulson on down to Larry Summers, who was, I'm just so happy with myself I can remember these fucking names. Ben
Bernanke, all of them.
Bernanke, Rubin, that other dude. It's not reflective of the people. It's not reflective of Main Street at all. And you're right about wages. I would love to see wages go up a bit, so that people
Let's do another 3 decades of trickle-down economics and see how it works out for the American people. Hasn't worked out well so far.
Yeah.
So when are we going to try something different?
Preach.
Okay, if you say, hey, you know what? Let's just give the wealthiest people more tax cuts, because if they save more in taxes, they're going to pay their employees more. Our wages have been stagnant for decades. Doesn't matter if it's Republican leadership or Democratic leadership. It's been the same. And there was only one candidate who, again, persistently spoke out against it. It was Bernie Sanders. That's the reason why millennials supported him.
I'll only say this really quickly. I think so if you have your taxes lowered, it's aspirational, right? So it's aspirational. They always say Americans are just we're millionaires who it just hasn't happened yet, right? So that if you lower taxes, my tax bracket, why am I bragging? All right, so it's lower because I'm doing okay, right? So that's what we want, but really we kind of it's a baited carrot, right? No,
But if you're going to cut taxes, you are automatically going to cut taxes for the rich, because the rich by far pay the most already. The top 1% pays 39% of all federal income taxes.
I know.
The top. No, this is math. You can shake your head, but
No,
it's math.
it is math. Okay, so because they
know
earn
that.
so much money, but if you're making $10 million and by the way, the wealthiest people get to take advantage of corporate tax loopholes that we don't get to take advantage
Agree. Hang on.
of.
You are making the case. You are making the case.
So,
Can
but
I agree
here's
with
the
you?
thing. If you're making $10 million and you're paying, let's say you pay your fair share of 28%.
Or 50.
You're still,
with state and local and property
Okay,
and
that's right.
sales.
We're talking
and-
about federal taxes. And by the way, they get, again, a bunch of loopholes that we as American people who make average incomes do not get to take
You get a
advantage
mortgage
of.
deduction.
And by the way, whenever they talk about getting rid of those corporate tax
But it could be
loopholes,
gone.
it's always the mortgage deduction. That's the only loophole that Republicans ever talk about closing.
No, they
When it
don't.
Yes,
No.
that is absolutely true. Every time they debate about taxes, they're like, you know what? Yeah, we agree. Corporate tax loopholes are a problem. We should get rid of the loophole in regard to mortgage
all right,
interest
you'll have your
rates.
turn.
Never said
You don't believe me? You guys can look it up yourselves.
Well, so you
don't.
said one point where you said Bernie Sanders was the only person advocating for higher wages. And so, but Rand Paul had a very interesting policy prescription where he said, well, instead of raising the minimum wage to $12 an hour, why don't we get rid of the payroll tax so you actually keep more of your money when you're earning $10 an hour? It's a working man's tax cut. So instead of mandating businesses pay more money and raising the price of production, you allow a worker to keep all of the money they work hour on hour. I think the most horrific and unfair tax is the FICA tax because our generation pays it. We might never see it again. It gets robbed from our paycheck. And Rand Paul talked about this a lot. Ted Cruz talked about it. So there were people on the right that said, hey, instead of saying we have to raise the minimum wage, you can keep every dollar you earn hour on the hour getting rid of the FICA.
Let me just point out, Donald Trump did as well. He said, let's simplify our tax. I want to put H&R Block out of business. I want every year at April 15th, you send in a postcard with your taxes. Now, yes, I do enjoy the tax credit for owning a home. I do enjoy a business write-off. But I know that nothing's free in this world. So Donald Trump, that's one of the things he campaigned on was simplifying everything from the top on down, including our taxes. And unfortunately, it seems to be the Democrats as well as the establishment Republicans this week that have proven they're the ones that want to continue this hamster wheel of having more government involved, more taxes involved. They don't want to get away with because they believe they can do better with your money than we can do with our own.
Trae, what do you think?
I mean, the way I feel about that whole thing is like, I mean, look, nobody likes paying taxes. You know, like, I mean, I grew up I lived in Tennessee my whole life. We don't have a state income tax. And where I grew up, I'm fucking Karl Marx, right? Like, I'm as left as it gets in that
I think you
redneck
tweeted to me.
town.
I'm kind of, now I know
And
who you
now,
are.
but then I moved to California, and I was like, shit, maybe I'm not as liberal as I thought I was. God damn. But, like, because, I mean, nobody likes paying taxes. I don't like it, but, that goes back to the same thing as, like, all these magic promises, Bernie Sanders was making. To me, that's the same way. It's like, yeah, we'll cut taxes, but then we have shit that has to be paid for, and they need to focus on it. I know they talk about cutting spending or whatever. I used to work for the U.S. Department of Energy. I was a I was a fucking big government guy.
Way to bury the lead, bro.
I know.
Jeez.
And I know from experience, and that's one of the better ones as far as that shit goes, how wasteful and ridiculous and inefficient bureaucratic the government is. It is. That's true.
You're still a liberal?
But anytime you guys start talking about cutting spending, it's always from the last places that I would go. Instead of, you can't even mention the fucking defense budget,
Can't
and
mention
like,
that.
no matter ever.
You can't mention cutting subsidies for
Right.
oil companies.
Right.
You
Like
can't talk about those things.
That's
but
what I'm
you
saying.
can talk
I'm-
about cutting benefits for.
But wait a
foreign
minute, you
What-
can use children.
but
You
what
can
do
talk about
millennials
raising
want?
taxes
Let me-
in the form of education, and the classrooms never see a penny of it.
Yeah.
It will
That's not
always
true.
go to the bureaucracy. It'll always go to the centralized
Let me-
system. So you
Yeah.
use our children
So-
every day as Democrats,
I think
and
as
it
we
never
tr-
gets to our
As we
classrooms.
try
for
to
our children.
improve the discourse, the one piece of advice I would just give to liberals in general is don't blur the Republican Party with the conservative libertarian movement that's growing in this country, because the vast majority of the movement I'm a part of, and I know the people in this audience are, we don't want handouts for these corporations. We do want the
Right.
wasteful spending, and we're not defending the subsidies. That's what those 51 senators in D.C. are all about. So I would just say don't loop us into that bucket. We've never said that. Guy has never said that. Scottie has never said that. I've never said that. We're not here defending that. And I find far too often I'm put on defense with something I've never espoused, because someone in the Republican Party, which I don't even consider myself a member of, said, I think it's terribly misrepresentative.
So I appreciate you. Sorry for jumping in. I appreciate you giving me advice. However, this is a panel about giving conservatives advice about appealing to millennials.
It's a we went down a rabbit hole, obviously.
Okay. So, look, you have to focus on the issues that they care about. And they feel, again, left behind by both parties. And you say, oh, well, you know, there's a growing movement toward libertarian conservatives. All right, so let's look at what millennials feel about conservative issues. They don't want government involved in their personal lives. Maybe they want government involved when it comes to regulating some of the crony capitalism that we see right now, but they don't want to be told who they can marry, how they can have sex, when they can have sex. And the conservatives, over and over again, just dwell on those issues. They don't want to be told what they can do with their bodies, whether or not they can have abortions, whether or not they can get birth control. They don't want to be told whether or not, you know, any of these personal issues that honestly is none of the government's business whatsoever.
Guy is the authority figure on this topic, so I'm going to let him talk.
There's a lot to unpack there. So I agree with you on a few points. And at some point, can we just come back and put a pin in this? Can we come back to entitlement spending and just the massive drowning debt that we have on that? Because that's like, we have to talk about that. But on social issues, I think, yes, younger people are trending left on a number of them. Obviously, LGBT issues. I mean, I think this is a generational thing. I don't think it's right versus left. The Pew poll that came out just recently showed that 60+% of millennial conservatives are for gay marriage. I think this is becoming less of an issue. We are also, millennials, the most pro-life generation, except for senior citizens. We are more pro-life than Xers. Yes, it is true. There's data. There's data.
Where is that data from? Because the data that I've seen from actual credible places, Pew Research, Hallstatt Research, both of them say that they do overwhelmingly support reproductive rights. Overwhelmingly.
I can happily send you lots of things that I've written about this, including a poll that Harvard University did of millennials exclusively that showed that millennials are, I was surprised how pro-life we are. So these are not the same. They're not the same issues. We probably could form some sort of consensus. We would think later term abortion, there's strong opposition to that. Your party is way out there on that issue. You're always trying to talk.
We're not way out there.
You are way out there.
We are against late-term abortion unless the woman's life is in danger. And by the way, late-term abortion...
That is still pro-life.
Hold on. Late-term abortion is such a ridiculous fear-mongering point from the right because it is incredibly rare that a woman has a late-term abortion. It's incredibly rare to find doctors that are willing to perform it. And when it happens, it's overwhelmingly because the fetus is not expected to survive or the woman's life is in danger. So you guys love bringing up that late-term abortion thing, but it rarely happens. It is not an issue.
I have a question.
If it rarely happens, why don't you make it illegal then?
Why would we make it illegal if it's being used to save a woman's life? Why would we make it illegal if it's being used to save a woman's life? It doesn't make any sense.
Then go to the emergency room and go through a hospital. Don't go to Planned Parenthood for it then. And use my taxpayer dollars.
I feel like...
What does it matter if it's Planned Parenthood or a hospital? If a woman's life is in danger,
there's a major difference between Planned Parenthood. One tries to
goes?
save lives, one ends a life. Big difference between the two.
I'm sure people living in rural Texas who now do not have access to health care because there's
Thanks to Obamacare.
Stop interrupting me. Let me talk.
I'm correcting you. I'm fact checking.
That is not because of Obamacare. A lot of women and men rely on Planned Parenthood for preventative care. And you guys fight tooth and nail to defund it and shut it down because 3% of what Planned Parenthood does happens to be abortions. Yes.
Sorry, talking points called out.
Fake news.
Man, you guys have really decided to drink that conservative Kool-Aid, which is
I will
fine.
say that. I will say that. I will say that.
And it tastes so good. It tastes like freedom.
I will say this. This is really intense. And I will say that you were definitely. I mean, like there's a lot of young people here that probably haven't. These guys haven't goofed in a lady and had to go to Planned Parenthood. So, which makes your outlook on things a lot different. You know what I'm saying? What does goofing mean? Goofing? I can't see. This is the problem. They don't teach sex ed. All right. But that's what I mean. I mean, millennials, you haven't had enough skin in the game exactly to formulate. This is a sexual thing again, but it's like.
Not getting any better.
No, I don't give a shit. It's like, but I feel like this. I feel like, yeah, I mean, we could talk about abortion rights and things like that, but and that is a very good back and forth you guys had. But with millennials, I think there needs to be a little bit more room for the wisdom that you might need certain fucking protections, down the road, things like that. Or what's the wisdom of the laws that exist right now? I don't know. I'm just saying. Like, we can go back and forth, and we can say, like, defund Planned Parenthood. But, like, I always say, usually you're liberal until you get beat over the head, and then you're like, I got to get a fucking gun. You know what I'm saying? Like,
or you pay taxes and you become a Republican.
Right. Or maybe you're not one thing or another. Or maybe, maybe sometimes you need to...
You bring up a good point, which is young people and college students, millennials, are more likely to pick from a variety of different stances on issues. Which is why they're migrating away from political parties.
Right.
No different than trying to create, this is kind of a bad example, but an iTunes playlist of
Do
favorite
it.
political issues.
Yeah.
And they're saying, like, I like this one, I don't like that one, I like this. And there's some consistency and there's some contradiction.
That's why I'm a Spotify guy.
There we go.
Yeah.
But Guy made a great point, which is it's not true to say all social issues are the same with millennials, and the data doesn't show it. With drugs, for example, millennials strongly favor decriminalization, legalization when it comes to other issues. So, Guy, I'd love to yield, and I'm sure someone's going to interrupt someone.
But drugs is a good topic. We should definitely talk about drugs.
Okay.
Because I think drugs are a really good topic because I think Republicans have a moment. We were talking about this yesterday, me and Trae, and I feel because of the opioid and heroin epidemic, right? It's hitting Trump's it's hitting places that voted for Trump solidly, like West Virginia,
from.
places.
Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire.
It's affected my life, my friends from high school and things like that. And I feel like what's happening is I think Senator Capito wanted like $45 billion put into the last failed attempt to repeal Obamacare. What they were going to do was like give her $45 billion, but at the same time they were going to strip Medicaid funding. So it doesn't really people pay for detox with fucking Medicaid in West Virginia. So it doesn't really help, right? So we're put in a conundrum. And now I think you can actually, Republicans or whatever, conservatives, libertarians, or whatever you want to say, I'm sorry to not, designate the line. Jesus, I need like some fucking diagrams. But I think there's a moment. There's a moment where the president can actually score some points with millennials in that way. Because it's not going away, and it's getting worse. And I don't know.
Trae.
It's like, yeah.
I'd love to see that happen, but I just don't see it because I'm from a place that's been ravaged by the opioid epidemic. My mom is a addict, has been for basically my whole life. She's in recovery now, but my first cousin OD'd last year. I'm extremely close to this subject, and I'd love to see something get done, but I don't see it happening. But I don't really feel that it's a super partisan thing either. I think it's an American thing in that. The way people look at addicts and drug use and shit in general is just mostly like, gross or, total lack of sympathy or whatever. And then the other huge problem is the fucking lizards at Big Pharma, and it's an insane amount of money they make off OxyContin, an insane amount. And, as long as that keeps happening, I don't, if the Republican Party made that one of their big things, actually doing something about the opioid epidemic, and I thought they were serious about it, I'd be all for that. That would appeal to me greatly. But like I said, I'll believe that shit when I see it.
But here's the question: like Jeff Sessions actually last week, he was, he wants to get tough on heroin imports, things like that. But that's
okay. Well, all right, I should be clear. Getting tough on it, especially from somebody like that, that is more of the war on drugs bullshit,
Absolutely.
Which it did not fucking work at all. It's been an abject failure. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about like a paradigm shift in the way we approach it, treatment and recovery and rehabilitation, not fucking locking people up for the same time as rapists get locked up for, losing themselves to drugs or whatever.
But this appeals to millennials, does it not?
I think there's a lot of agreement here, and
Yeah.
This is where the new breed of conservative libertarianism would agree with you that you decriminalize other drugs. They might not have to actually gravitate towards, OxyContin or all those others. But we would say, us conservatives would say, it's more efficient and effective for private health centers and charities and local hospitals than a government institution to actually solve a lot of these problems. And I think that's really a disagreement that we have a lot of the times, is just because you're going to spend more federal money on something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make a difference at all.
And I think as conservatives, we're constantly preaching government doesn't deliver results on these big projects that they embark upon, and that applies to the drug war, right? Like, this is a giant, costly endeavor between the law enforcement element of it and the incarceration element of it. It's a failure. It's a big government failure.
Absolutely.
This should be a conservative position to have. And we should apply that evenly as we do when we look at other big government failures and say, why are we still repeating these same massively expensive mistakes?
May I jump in?
I mean, I'm with you on that.
So I agree with you as well. I think the war on drugs is a waste of time, waste of money. We've spent $1 trillion on the war on drugs since 1971, which is absurd. But I don't want it to get to a point where we have so many people addicted to opioids and heroin that we have to figure out, how are we going to take care of these people? Do we criminalize them or decriminalize them? Obviously, I don't think we should criminalize them. But it shouldn't even get to that point. Now,
about too late for that. Sorry to tell you. It's a fucking epidemic.
It is way late. But there's still an issue with doctors overprescribing opioids.
Absolutely.
And part of the reason why is because we don't have laws that prevent pharmaceutical companies from pushing doctors to do it. There are doctors that go to vacations with pharmaceutical representatives, and they essentially get convinced to overprescribe these drugs. That's the reason why we're having this problem right now. Sure. And so, look, I don't want too much government regulation. I hate too much government regulation. But in cases like that, it makes sense to have regulation. It makes sense to reel these pharmaceutical companies in and tell them, no, that is illegal. You are not allowed to vacation with these doctors and convince them to go ahead and prescribe these drugs.
You make a great point. And to give a little bit of a shout out to Sessions, he did just enact the largest lockdown on opioid pushers. He put over 600 of them. So just to give a little shout out, he did go after them. Got very little play in the media. In Florida, doctors that were illegally colluding with pharmaceutical companies, taking kickbacks. So
giving drug vacations and shit.
So Sessions has been really good on going after these bad doctors, these bad practices, and I don't agree with them.
Can I also point out, I feel like there's a mixed message right now amongst this generation about drugs. I guess we have this division that there's good drugs and there's bad drugs. Because on one hand, you want to fight opioids, and I agree in that 100%. On the other hand, we have states legalizing marijuana and justification of it but I was a part of a very strong generation of Nancy Reagan's Just Say No program. And so I learned to say just say no to everything. And now we're telling this next generation of kids there are some drugs that are good and some drugs are bad.
They are different.
But they all have they all can have an effect on your cognizant ability.
Well, those two things are consistent, though. Like, wanting to fight the opioid epidemic and decriminalizing marijuana are consistent with each other, because in places where it's been legalized, instances of heroin overdoses and
more homelessness in Colorado right now. There's less job performance.
I think guys said that if you can, if you could smoke weed, you're less likely
to fucking shoot up.
I know. I have to delve into this issue a little bit.
We'll take them in a minute.
So marijuana is a non-lethal drug. If you don't like marijuana, that's fine. If you believe in individual liberty, you don't smoke marijuana. Others who want to smoke marijuana
I have a problem with people that get behind a car.
Allow me to finish my point, please. Let me finish my point. Okay. The prohibition of marijuana has been so disastrous for people's lives because we have incarcerated nonviolent individuals who have been caught in possession of marijuana. In the 1980s, we had this explosion of the private prison industry because these entrepreneurs realized, hey, there's big business in imprisoning nonviolent drug offenders, so let's do it. So the reason why we've continued this prohibition on drugs like marijuana is because there are private interests, which, by the way, are paid by our taxpayer dollars,
Scottie,
to incarcerate these individuals. Marijuana is non-lethal. Alcohol is. Tobacco is. Why is it that alcohol and tobacco is legal? Right? So
pump the brakes on that shit.
So I think it should be 100% legalized. It should be regulated. It should be taxed. And we should stop destroying people's lives by throwing them in
one
prison
response?
over marijuana.
Can I have one response? I want you to go to a family that's been affected. It's not.
I smoke marijuana all the time, by the way,
Jail
and
time.
I'm fine.
Wait, can I answer?
I disagree
Jail time is one
100%
way
with
that
you.
affects. I agree, but another way is lack of productivity. The family member not being able to go to a job,
Well,
not be able to keep
no
a job
shit.
because of
Here-
marijuana.
Smoke
So it has
marijuana
nothing to
all
do
the
with
time.
jail
I
we
time.
gotta-
go to my job every day.
I will be the final
That's
word
because
because
you're a
I'm the
young-
moderator. So we're going to get to this question right here. My opinion on drugs. I've never done weed. I'm never going to do weed. It doesn't bother me if someone wants to do it, honestly. It really doesn't make any difference to me.
Individual
So
liberty, baby.
that's what I'm all about.
Public
So go ahead.
safety.
Yeah.
This thing on?
Yep.
It is now.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to sincerely thank Charlie and Turning Point USA for the first actually balanced panel I've seen this
Yeah.
weekend.
We're awesome. We're awesome.
We are.
And all day yesterday,
Kirk for president.
all day yesterday, I felt like I was watching CNN live. Okay, it's like not 1-on-1, 2-on-1. It's just like it's balanced, and it's great. I wish it would be like this next year, all the panels. Anyway, realizing it's a subjective point, I still think the majority here would agree our youth are being socialized to be left of center, and in a post-Trump USA, the left has gone into overdrive. So, question is, how do we get culture, education, entertainment, academia, all that stuff, etc., to be more unbiased? That's it. It doesn't
Guy.
have to be right, just unbiased.
I'm going to yield the guy.
How do we change the entire culture? Let's tackle that one in 4 minutes. No, it's
10 words.
It is really, really difficult. And one of the things that I'm worried about, and by the way, I'm just going to point out we still have a $20 trillion debt that we haven't talked about and tens of trillions of dollars of unfunded promises. This is going to affect millennials big time. It's sort of like we'll keep pushing that can down the road. But to your question, one of the things that worries me about the current upheaval in American politics, I think to some extent the frustration and anger at both political parties is completely warranted and healthy. I think it's also true of the media. People do not trust the mainstream media, and that is absolutely very well deserved. I also, yes, you can clap for that. Fake news, very sad. So sad. But in order for us to have a functioning, flourishing republic, there needs to be some degree of shared trust in institutions, and we're losing it. And it seems like every institution seems to be working overtime to relinquish trust in themselves. And I'm getting worried to the point that we're going to be in total silos with our own set of facts and our own set of beliefs with almost no common ground or like a factual basis off of which to build. And we need those institutions, the presidency, the Congress, to treat each other as co-equal branches. We need the media, a fair group of media to sort of decide or help sift through BS versus reality. We need those things. The people in charge of doing those things dating back years are doing a terrible job of it, which is why we're heading down the path that we are.
Let me just say this, the other thing for pop culture, the Republicans need more than just Duck Dynasty and the Duggars on our side.
Swamp people. Swamp people's good.
Next question.
Hi, Anna Kasparian. You talked about how the government subsidized large oil companies, and they're also subsidizing large farms like soy, wheat, all that. What would you say about government spending about $400 million to Iran, getting back some prisoners? Is that use of good resources to get those prisoners back, or is that bad spending?
I missed the last part of what you said. Can you just say one?
He essentially he said you're talking about subsidies, $400 million to Iran to bring back prisoners. Correct? That's what your question was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, where do you fall? You don't like government spending for big oil companies. I don't. But, like, do you agree with us, the government paying Iran $400 million?
To bring back U.S. prisoners?
Yes, U.S. prisoners.
That's a really good question. I honestly haven't thought about that and, the nuances of that issue, and I promise to look into it. Look, when it comes to Americans' lives, I mean, obviously that's incredibly important, and so it's a difficult decision to make. And honestly, regardless of what decision you make, you're going to get criticized, because if you say, no, we're not going to pay Iran, those lives are lost. If you do pay Iran, you're helping them potentially, build weapons or do something that could be used to retaliate against the United States in the
incentivizing
future.
them to do it again.
Or incentivize.
And
So
whatever,
it's a
whatever,
difficult question.
whatever decision you
no
make, just
doubt.
don't lie about it. That'd be my thing. If you're going to pay them $400 million, don't lie about it.
And don't put it in a crate in unmarked bills in the middle of the night. That doesn't help either.
Thank you. On a private jet.
On a private jet.
Hi. So I'm progressive, and if you want to know what progressives think...
Into the microphone. You got to talk into the microphone.
So I'm progressive. If you want to know how progressives...
You got to talk into the microphone.
You got to get right into it.
Yeah. You can pick up the mic. You can take it out of the thing. So you can pretty much define progressives by they want to stand up for the little guy. That's what we are about. And conservatives, on the other hand, they're about structure. Structure gives them comfort. They say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We know the rules. This is how we can move forward. So if you extend that out to how we view the world, of course progressives aren't going to trust the free market because it's amoral as shit. And of course conservatives aren't going to trust the big government because the structure sucks. So why is it that we continue to argue for big government or for free market instead of working together and pulling the bows from each side? It's like we want a moral system that has a structure that conservatives like. But I haven't heard that once in this whole political convention.
I'll take exception with one of your points. I think the free market is the most moral, only moral system ever encountered, ever discovered by man. So I will take... It has lifted more people out of poverty. It has accelerated the rate of human prosperity. It has raised our standard of living beyond any scope of imagination. It has reached human ingenuity greater than we ever could have possibly discovered 300, 400, 500 years ago. To your point, I think there is a fundamental disagreement, though. You do bring up a good point, to agree with you, that there's a conversation going on in this country of what do we stand for. Chelsea Handler said something yesterday that I tweeted about that I fundamentally disagreed with. She said, American values, they're no different than other countries' values. Whoa, 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 whoa. Fundamentally different. See, our country has always stood differently and said, we get our rights from God, not from government. It's in our documents. And the separation of powers, the respect for private property, the way we treat our constitutional republic of checks and balances, and we look to communities and individuals and people and not to government, and we've always respected the individual and free enterprise. So there's a discussion to be had, is what do we stand for as a country? I know what we believe as conservative libertarians, but that's a discussion we need to have because it's going to define the next 100 years, and our generation is going to have to say, I want to go more towards the path of Western Europe, 70% tax rates, welfare programs, be taken care of, or we're going to live in dangerous freedom, allow human prosperity, and continue to lead the world. That's the discussion we need to have.
Challenge you on the capitalism front. Just a quick
Sure.
pushback.
I don't want to monopolize the time.
No, but it seems like to say that capitalism is immoral, considering how much hunger, pollution, just run down the line of crap that's wrong with this world. Capitalism's moral? Really?
Yes.
Can I jump in just for 1 second? I kind of want to buttress some of the points that you made because I agree with you. I think that a free and
Dude, you're at the back of the line.
A free and fair market creates amazing opportunities for people, which is why, my family immigrated here from Armenia and my dad was able to do what he did with his life. And it's incredible, right? And I think a lot of people want that piece of the American dream. However, I think the reason why there is a little bit of a backlash toward the system that we have now is because we don't have the type of capitalism that we used to. We do have crony capitalism. Telecommunications companies are now monopolizing, their businesses. You see these mega mergers, and they get to charge whatever they want because you have no choice. You have very few options. That is not a free market.
And regulations benefit the biggest players because they can hire all the lawyers to navigate it, and the small guys
they buy the head of the Federal Trade Commission.
Screwed.
But there are also antitrust. There are antitrust regulations that prevent some of those gigantic mergers from happening. And so, look, it's a balancing act, right? And so, I don't want to live in a communist country. I do appreciate and want a capitalist country, but I also want a system that doesn't allow people who are already at the top to take all the advantage and for the little guys to not even have an opportunity. Conservatives love to talk about small businesses.
No,
we do agree. We talk about small businesses a lot. But here's the thing. Why aren't we subsidizing small businesses instead of oil companies? You never hear about that.
Well, but hang on. Just a few minutes ago, you said, we shouldn't be cutting taxes for the rich. A lot of the rich are S corporations, small businesses filing as individuals.
They file as individuals. So the revenue looks like they're a millionaire, But they have all the revenue coming through their small business. That's a dry cleaning shop that might do $1 million in revenue. They look like a millionaire on their tax filing, but they're supporting 19 employees and they take $50,000 in earnings.
And considering the number one noose that was on small business last year was consider the Affordable Health Care Act.
Exactly right.
So remove the noose and making government forcing small businesses to hire, and we might actually.
We got to get to the next question. I want to make sure we get to the audience. So go ahead.
This question is for Anna. So I'm a conservative person.
Speak louder. You got to go right in.
I want to know your answer to this. So the economics of healthcare aside, what I find so offensive and so patronizing to me is that kind of, as a conservative, I see some socialist loonbag from Vermont going to make healthcare decisions for me and what I want. And you look to England with that tragic case of Charlie Gard, where the government in England decided that it was within the child's best interest that he wouldn't get healthcare as opposed to letting the parents make the decision. So why do you trust in a socialized system some government bureaucrat or some politician to make a decision as opposed to letting the individual customer decide for themselves?
Right.
It's a moral question, not an economic one.
So the Charlie Gard story is from the UK. It's a completely different system, and I agree with you that the parents should be, the decision makers. In that
I thought that was a single-payer system.
I'm not. Why do you
Bernie
interrupt
has
me?
said that's
Because
the
I'm
model
correcting
he
you.
wants
You
to
can't
bring
handle me
here.
make a point. You have to interrupt me every
But it
time
needs
I
to
make
be a
point.
correct
Just
point.
please
Let her
me
finish. Let her finish.
Just let me finish.
Let her finish.
That's all I'm asking. Okay. In terms of our healthcare system, look, right now we are dealing with a situation where a lot of people can't make their own decisions for themselves, right? It's true. I mean, think about it. If we didn't even have the Affordable Care Act, you couldn't even make a decision as to which healthcare company you would get your coverage from because they would deny you if you had a pre-existing condition. That's right. That was a big problem. But another thing that I find interesting is in Texas, let's look at Texas for 1 second, okay? In Texas, lawmakers are trying to ban private insurance companies from offering coverage for reproductive issues, okay? They want to make sure that no private insurance company covers any abortion costs, right? Now I get it, that's a conservative thing. They don't like abortion, so they want to go ahead and regulate the personal lives of women. But if you genuinely care about having options, then why do you have conservatives fighting to regulate private health insurance companies so they don't cover certain procedures?
So actually
you can't
what they
have your
did,
cake and eat it too.
what
You
they
can't
did-
say you want more options when you're going,
what they did,
off to ban certain.
You're wrong completely on Texas.
No, I'm not.
Here's what they did. They said,
I'm
we
not.
will
You
not
guys can look it up.
force you to pay for contraception.
That's not true.
That is exactly right. It's completely
not what's
different.
happening in Texas.
It is completely different. Completely
Republican
different. Trae,
lawmakers
do you have a
in
thought on
Texas
this?
right now have drafted legislation. It has not passed.
I wanna
and it would
Google
essentially
to see what
ban private
happened.
insurance companies
Both of you
from
guys.
covering abortion procedures. Okay, that is an example of conservative lawmakers getting in between you and your doctors
You're just
and your
not
health insurance
correct on
company.
this, but we'll
It
move on
is,
to
and
the
you
next
guys can look it
question.
up. You
So
have the
I don't know
power
how
of
else to
Google
put it.
right at your fingertips.
So let's put the government in charge of everything.
Exactly.
Look at this one potential abuse in one state. I know. Let's put the federal government in charge of everything. I don't follow.
It's
Yes, my
interesting
friend.
how people from.
You got to yield.
This guy's
I wanna
got a
ask one
sweet
question.
hat. Go
My
ahead,
name's
dude.
Matthew Woods. I'm from Make California Great Again. We have a booth here, and I would not normally come to this meeting here, but I was inspired by the amount of young people that has come to our booth that are motivated, that are hopeful, that are active, wanting to get active. I was here last year, not one Trump hat, not one conservative shirt. No, almost all the seminars here were not friendly to conservatives or Trump. In fact, they mocked Trump almost the entire time. And yet this year, there's a change. And they ain't mocking Trump like they were last year. And not just Trump. But these people want to get involved. These young people are looking for leadership. They're looking for hope. And the hate of the left they've used to demonize people is gone. So the question is, how do you see we can harness these people, their passion? And I know there's a lot of problems with government, all these issues with the millennials, but they are, I think, more conservative than you realize, and they're coming out, and I'm hopeful. How can we corral these folks to we have some bad things happening in Sacramento, so we want to get them involved. What's the best way to get them involved?
Thank you.
I
You
mean,
want Trae?
yeah, that's kind of the whole question of this panel, like the fundamental question of it. And so if I was going to, put a bow on it answer to that, I think, based on where I'm from and a lot of the people that I know my age growing up, and this has kind of been touched on already, is that for conservatives to reach millennials and, activate them and everything, and you guys have done a hell of a job of this, focus on the money and that part and just forget about the, Nancy Reagan just say no and fucking racism and homophobia and all that bullshit, because millennials in general are not going to go with that, and I think that stuff is a non-starter. And I know earlier you guys said, like, that's not really fair, that, that's not really how it works anymore, and we kind of are moving away from that. But I just don't, again, having spent 30 years in the South, I just do not think that's true at all.
Well,
at state-level conservative politicians in the South stay passing draconian, stupid, regressive bullshit legislation all the time.
Let me make a couple points. The first is, President Trump, believe it or not, he's never got credit for this, was the first incoming president to ever support gay marriage in American history. First incoming president.
You know what? I gave him credit for that until this transphobia bullshit he started on.
And another point, he was the first candidate to ever have an openly gay speaker at the Republican National Convention and to help run his transition. So there is movement on the Republican side where there are more openly gay pundits and Congress people. Thank you, Guy. I couldn't have made it more obvious, couldn't I? I was like, Guy, raise your hand.
No, I mean, again,
but there is movement, and so to say that the younger conservatives there is a piece of upward trajectory that's positive, and we are focusing more on the fiscal and libertarian. I want to get to one more because I'm getting the yank here, and I apologize. So,
okay, cool. I'll keep it short just because
louder.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. So in the interest of time, I'll just keep it short. One of the problems I've seen, particularly from like the TYT network or the regressive left in general, right, is these use of like straw men to archetype conservatives in a bad light. So one of the ones I noticed that was used just in this conversation alone was saying conservatives don't ever talk about cutting military spending, when in fact that conversation is being had in a lot of different circles, Rand Paul, Justin Amash being some of the leaders of that. So one straw man that comes particularly pertinent to this conversation, I think, is listening to the lead up to this debate. Anna, you referred to Charlie as a millennial who hates millennials. Now, I've been following Charlie for a while, listening to a lot of his speeches. I don't think there's anything that indicates that. So
when did I say that Charlie's a millennial who hates millennials?
When you were giving the debate prep, when Cenk said he was debating Ben Shapiro, and you said Hassan was debating a millennial who hates millennials, i.e. yesterday. So I'm interested to hear you. You've essentially defamed Charlie. I'd like to hear you back up that claim. So is that just purely a straw man, or do you have any evidence to support that?
I honestly don't even recall saying that.
Well, there's video evidence of it.
Hold on.
I mean, the video will go and show you did say that.
And you drink too much Trump Kool-Aid, homeboy. Yes, you do. Yes.
So are you just going to deflect,
or
I
have to ask very quickly, because I find it super fast. There are a lot of Trump supporters here, which I find super interesting. You guys get to support whoever you want, no criticism. But I am curious to see how you feel about the presidency so far. How do you feel about Scaramucci, his communications director, talking about the infighting? It's really fascinating. So we can sit here and we can talk about what I said about Charlie Kirk.
Neil Gorsuch.
You guys got a conservative Supreme Court justice. Awesome.
Unemployment at a 16-year low.
You also have a communications director that talks about Steve Bannon giving himself oral pleasure. I mean, I don't know.
The Dow breaking 7 all-time records last month.
I'm getting the yank.
Can I just make one short comment? I do think that perhaps all of us millennials can, to your point about self-hating millennials or whatever, I do think that we get dumped on as a generation a lot, especially by the people who raised us. So it's like, hey, boomers, what's up, boomers? How did we become the way we are? I think that we get a bad rap too often. I think that we're an incredible generation. We're the biggest block of voters, so you better stop dumping on us constantly because we don't appreciate it. And if you think that all hope is lost for people our age, look at the innovators, look at the entrepreneurs who are our age, and look at the people serving in our armed forces who volunteer to defend us who are our age. So I get tired. I get tired of the trope about millennials being the worst. We're not.
Yep.
So, I'm getting the.
By the way, I just want to say one more thing in regard to this question.
Well, there's always one more thing.
The Charlie Kirk thing. I got to be honest with you. It was probably when we were promoting our presence here at Politicon. Charlie, I apologize.
There's no need for an apology.
Hold on.
I didn't.
Hold on. No. I do want to apologize.
I appreciate it, though. Thank you.
I did not know who you were prior to meeting you today. So if I said that, I think I just assumed that
Let her finish.
I know. Just let me finish for half a second, guys. Like, I know you don't want to hear from a liberal, but that's all right.
She's actually apologizing. Guys, she's actually apologizing.
I'm sorry for saying you hate millennials. If that's what I said, I didn't even know who you were.
You're good.
Okay?
Thank you. And let me wrap it all up. We could go for another couple hours, but I think I'm getting the yank in the hook. So in closing, it's definitely going to be an interesting next couple election cycles. And without a doubt, we got a real vociferous crowd out here. Millennials will define the future of this country. And the decisions we make in the ballot box and on college campuses will determine the future. Thank you for being here. It's been a wonderful panel. Thank you.
Watch the young